All right, so Psylocke just came out, but I wanted to do a Reddit reply that wasn't basically all just focused on her. Since we just did a video on that, maybe we'll do another follow-up video in the future because there's kind of some rumblings about her if she's really that good, or if the deck or the cards they've shown are really that good, or whatever else. But I didn't want to get into it too much with this Reddit reply. I found a bunch of different topics that we can talk about today, so I'm gonna kind of go through them relatively quickly. If there's something that you want me to spend more time on in the future, let me know down in the comments. But let's jump into Reddit. All right, so this was just a fun post. Total cost of Marvel Champions so far, and they went through it, and they talked about how much things cost and everything, and basically added it all up and all that fun stuff. And if you looked at MSRP, getting sleeves for everything and purchasing additional storage, you'd be looking at about $1,400 for this game. Yeah, yeah, and then you get tokens on top of it. Forget about it. Now, I know most people don't buy it MSRP, right? You usually get it discounted, but still, like, it's kind of crazy how much this game has gone up, or not gone up, how quickly this game, how much it all adds up, like how quickly it all adds up, right? So I've seen a few people ask about this, like, how much have I invested in Marvel Champions at this point? Probably about $1,000 at least at this point, and this game is at at worst halfway done, right? At best, a quarter of the way done, you figure, like as far as life cycle goes, maybe even longer, who knows. But yeah, kind of crazy. And they talk about the amount of cards. I know a lot of people ask about this, how many cards are in the game total. This is how many. So how good of an experience is playing Marvel Champions solo? I've been seeing this question a lot recently, and I don't know if it's just people are like trying to get into the game. There's more people trying to get into the game, and they just want to play solo. They don't know if their friends would be into it. Maybe they're not huge into the board game hobby yet. I don't know. Um, it's good. Like, it's really good. That's what this whole channel is based off of, basically, is how good it is as a solo game. Now, what's kind of funny is when the game first came out, there's a really strong argument that the game was not designed for solo play. It was designed more so for multiplayer, and people still make that argument today. And you could still say that, right? The core idea of the game was always designed in multiplayer focus. But I will say that there has been a lot of emphasis put on solo play with recent cards and recent heroes that have come out, right? The different way things have scaled over time. Some of these heroes that come out, especially in the Spider-Man cycle, right, the Web Warrior cycle, they're all super strong solo heroes. I feel like now and again they design things for the solo player, but it will always work better in multiplayer because it'll be more balanced. But it's still a great experience solo. It's still a lot of fun. It's still my preferred way to play, especially compare this to two-handed. I don't mind two-handed playing. I'm trying to get better at it, but I'll just play it solo because that's a ton of fun, and why not? So, favorite test scenarios, without having a single issue with the game aside from the last turns being a bit deflated, I've stopped playing and pretty much collecting since the Web Wars campaign box. I've been itching and again to build decks where some good scenarios to play test with. So a lot of people will use like Claw to play test. Some people use Drang, and I don't really agree with that. Claw may be the best one out there right now because he's just kind of a straightforward villain. The problem is nowadays, so many villains have either stalwart or steady that you can't test decks that are stun lock, confuse lock against those villains. Really, there's other villains that just attack really hard, so you're not going to test a deck against Ronin or anything like that. You have things like Rise of Red or the Red Skull against Red Skull or the Collector, where it's very thwart heavy, so it doesn't really determine a balanced deck, right? Like there's so many villains out there now. They're so hyper specific, and even Hela, right? Hela's kind of her own thing going on there. Now, I don't know if you can really quote unquote test a deck against one villain. I think you build the deck for a villain, and then you see if with minor tweaks if that deck can take on other villains. I don't know if there's really a perfect test scenario anyway. The closest I would say is probably Claw. And again, with Drang, the only reason I get a little hesitant with Drang is because Drang gives you a free resource generator, which kind of skews things a little bit. So I'm not the biggest fan of him being a test. But yeah, let me know. Who do you use as a test scenario? For me, it's generally Claw. But nowadays, I'm just building for that scenario in particular. Whatever villain I choose, doesn't matter which one, I'm just building to that at this point. So it's kind of weird. It's kind of a different way to deck build, for me at least. So. All right, best two-hero team. Which two heroes pair the best together? There's only one correct answer for this, obviously, and that is Valkyrie and Hulk. They are the two best heroes in this game. They're two strongest heroes, and they are both goated. So Obviously, those two, but this is a question I want to know your thoughts down below. Who are the best two heroes? A lot of people talk about synergy with Starlord and Kitty Pryde synergizing, which I thought was a really interesting response. That was kind of cool. Iron Man does work on a lot with other players, basically the way he works. Wolverine you could do, but I think he's just stronger than Solo in general. I've seen a couple people make this argument for Black Widow and Hawkeye. I think that's more because of the movies they do that. I don't know. I don't see them working that well together for me. I just don't. And some other people throw out some other ideas, but it's kind of cool because you can do a lot of off the wall pairings, and not too many people recommend uh, pairings based off of team up cards, which I thought was interesting, such as Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. I think Nelson and I have done it a while back. I really like that pairing. I thought that pairing worked really, really well overall. So that's one of my more favorite pairings, but I haven't done too many with newer heroes. So I have to go back and try that. Maybe that's something we do in the future. But yeah, as far as what the best is, obviously Valkyrie and Hulk. All right, trying every matchup in the game. So they did this math. By my count, there are currently 41 heroes and 36 villains and scenarios. There are 5 aspects, if you include basic. This means that there's approximately, discounting anomalies like Spider-Woman, if you did the math, 7,380 combinations at standard difficulty for true solo, and then another 7,380 for expert, which means there's 14,000 unique games to play. So you even get into mixing the mods or modulars or whatever else. So has anyone tried to set up to every hero aspect against every scenario? I thought about doing this. I did. And then I realized there were just some scenarios I just don't ever want to try. And a lot of them have to do with Ronin and not being in a rush deck. A lot of them have to do with Collector and using like aggression, not even aggression, like protection or leadership for Collector. I just don't want to bother with that. So it'd be interesting to see if anyone's like trying to attempt this or not. I don't know how many people would, because it just is so many unique versions of the game. But the reason I bring this up is because it is cool how many unique games you can play at this point, right? There are so many interesting ways to play this game, and it's really cool with what we have nowadays. Again, like I mentioned earlier, the game is still kind of somewhat early in its life cycle. I would assume probably before the halfway point, and we just have so many ways to play this game already. And I think that's really cool. I think that's really really fun and really neat. Is Hulk worth getting if I play two-handed exclusively? Yes. The answer is yes. You should get Hulk. So Hulk is one of my favorite Marvel characters, but I've been on the fence about getting the pack as it's been rightfully bashed for its design shortcomings. Yes, it has some shortcomings, but it's fine. You could still work with Hulk, right? This is like, I feel like we've gotten to the point where Hulk is such a meme right now that it's Hulk is so broken he can't beat anyone ever. Like Absorbing Man is an insane challenge for Hulk. And it's not true, right? He's obviously more difficult to navigate. It's a little bit tougher. Chat recently recommended I do a Shield Justice Hulk deck, and actually it's pretty good, right? It fixes a lot of Hulk's issues, which is kind of fun. Hulk is rough, yes, but I feel like we're just getting to this point where we're just acting like he can never win a game. Like he can win. He can win a decent amount of games, especially in a rush deck. So from the reviews I'm reading, I'm seeing more discussions about the pains of making true solo decks work due to overcosted cards and limited hand size. Again, it's not as bad as it used to be, but sure, there's still some tough things with that. However, do things change in 200 play? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they do. Because you can lean into him just being aggression, basically, and have someone else worry about thwarting. His weakness is thwarting. Overcosted cards and hand size isn't that bad with him anymore, right? It's still kind of tough, but it's not terrible with him anymore. The hard part is that he can't thwart, like, at all. And people have built justice decks around it to balance him out, which does work. Again, shield justice, I think, works really well. But if you can just lean into what he's good at, which is aggression, like he's fine. He's a fine hero. He really is not that bad. So yeah, he's worth getting if you're playing two-handed. And honestly, I think he's worth getting regardless. If you like Hulk, like just go for it. He's a fun time. He's a good time. All right, what is your second favorite aspect for Ghost Spider? We all seem to agree that the best aspect is protection by a mile. I agree. Wondering the next one. So I've asked this a lot, and people really recommended aggression. They said aggression is really fun with her and can be really good. And I think that's what they say here. Protection is my second. Aggression is my favorite. Aggression is easily second best. Yeah. So aggression, I agree. I've done aggression, and it works pretty well. It's pretty fun. Um, because of the way a lot of her cards work is basically just response card, so you just kind of have to lean into that with aggression. But I think aggression, she works. Heck, even leadership, she works. And probably justice. I haven't tried justice too much with her. She the thing is her kit is so well balanced in general that yes, it's really good for protection because you can attack while defending. But she still works in other aspects like pretty well. I just think that me included, so many of us have gotten this mindset that like, no, protection is the best with her. Let's just stick on protection. Let's only do that. I get it. Like it's tough. But I think she's fine in other aspects too. So I need to experiment with that more. I think maybe that's something I'll do in the future is experiment different aspects with her. Next up is Groot and Think Fast. Is this a viable combo when Groot has encounters? I assume you can't play if he didn't take damage, and last year's ruling of dealing versus taking damage seems to solidify that, but I'm still regularly seeing the combo whenever Justice Groot is discussed. This one gets thrown out a lot. So for those that don't remember the whole debacle with deal and take damage, because this became a big thing and they kept changing things and they moved things around and it was a big mess for a little while. But basically what they ruled is there's a difference between dealing damage and taking damage. So if a player card requires you to deal damage to a target, the damage does not all have to be applied to the target for that cost to be paid. Right now, if it's take damage, you have to take all the damage. Now the thing with this is that there is no cost on this for take damage. As you can see, it just says take 1 damage. Like you just take a damage. It's not part of the cost because there's no arrow, so you can confuse the villain. So for their question, you can still do it because deal versus take doesn't apply here because it doesn't have the cost arrow. Confused? Yeah, I know. It's weird, but it's one of those things that Groot and Think Fast combo does work even with counters. You don't have to worry about it. But again, if you had it that had the arrow instead, then it wouldn't work. And this is also a good reminder to remember the difference versus deal and take damage, which is always kind of confusing, kind of rough. So anyway, Groot, Think Fast. It's a really, really, really strong combo. It absolutely works. Deal and take damage only really matter with before the arrow. So there we go. All right, last question. Should I get a hero pack just for the aspect cards? I think about getting Star-Lord, but I'm not really interested in the hero himself. But in the aspect cards, there's specifically ones related to Ariel. Have any of you done this? So I've never done this, but I see this brought up a lot that should you just buy a hero for the aspect cards? And at first I was like, no, you probably shouldn't because why spend money on something, whatever. If you play this game a lot and you really love deck building, I do think it's worth just buying a hero for the aspect cards. I've inadvertently done it because there's heroes I just don't play anymore, such as Doctor Strange. And I still use the aspect cards that come in Doctor Strange pack, right? Like I don't just like throw them aside or anything like that. So I think we all do this to a point where we'll buy a pack and maybe we will play the hero once or twice, but like that's it. Then we don't play him again because it doesn't fit into our style or we just don't like him or we rather play someone else, right? It's not that we don't like him, we rather do something else. So I feel like it's not that big of a deal anymore to just buy the cards for the aspect card or buy a hero pack just for the aspect cards. I don't think it's that big of a deal. And I know some people give people a hard time about this. Look, if this is a game that you play a lot and you love deck building, you love everything about it, then go for it, right? Or if this is a game you only play maybe once a month, then it's maybe not worth it. But you can make that financial decision yourself. But for me, I've really turned on this where originally I was like, nah, don't waste money on things if you're not going to use it. And nowadays it's like, well, no, deck building is really fun. If you play a few times a month, it's probably worth it. So let me know your thoughts. Have you ever bought a hero pack just for the aspect cards? Like I said, I've never done it on purpose, but inadvertently I've done it because there's just a lot of heroes I just don't really play as much anymore. So let me know. All right, so hopefully you enjoyed this Reddit reply. As I stated, we originally did a Psylocke preview. If you have not seen that preview yet, here it is. You can check it out. Click on that right there, and you see the video and all my thoughts and takes. Spoiler alert, I like her a lot. And if you made it to the end of this video, do me a huge favor. Hit the like button. Hit subscribe. It really helps out. See you all next time.